So it's been revealed that Ferrari will be running this thing for the upcoming 2024 Miami Grand Prix. Yeah, it's still a Formula 1 car. I'm glad you picked up on that. But as some of you may have ascertained by now, it's no longer just 100% Rossa Corsa red on this thing. There are now shades of Azzurro La Plata and Azzurro Dino blue spread all over the car, making it look like a normal Ferrari wearing a vest made out of a Smurf. Sure, it ain't 100% blue like some of us wishfuls were hoping for, but it is still a break from the norm, and that's cool. Except, it ain't the first time that Ferrari has raced in blue, and the last time they did it, it was so much better, even if it wasn't 100% them. Okay, story time. About 4,000 years ago, in 1964, bad blood was brewing in Italy. Again, the ever-charismatic don of Italian motoring, Enzo Ferrari, was incensed that his new GT car, the 250 LM, was denied eligibility into the World Sports Car Championship. He had already had run-ins with the FIA, the World Motorsports Council, and the ACI, the Italian motor racing governing body, over these sorts of things. But who could really blame them? When the rules required 100 examples of a car to be built, Enzo would quip, well, 50 would be good enough. This interesting Italian math didn't really work with the FIA, and when the ACI refused to back him, Enzo decided, fine, here's my competition license. You can have it. And you know what? I will go racing again, and when I do, my cars will never race in red again. At that time, this was blasphemy. Sacrilege, because back in these times, when companies didn't smear their corporate feces all over the cars, turning them into 200-mile-an-hour billboards and business cards, racing cars were typically painted in their country's racing colors. To race in red was to represent Italy. Ferrari had effectively turned his back on Italy, or he had felt they had turned their back on him. But here's the thing. There were still 2 rounds left in that year's Formula 1 World Championship, and Ferrari was still in with a chance to win both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships. And while Enzo was a stubborn man, he liked his racing to an unhealthy degree. So, the cars were shipped off to North America for the final 2 rounds in upstate New York and Mexico City, with both their drivers, Lorenzo Bandini and John Surtees, going along with them. And with this, Ferrari would still pick up Constructors' Championship points, and their drivers could still become the champion of the world. But the cars would not be running under the official Ferrari banner. Instead, Enzo enlisted the help of Luigi Chinetti, an American-based importer of Ferraris, to run the cars under its own entity, the North American Racing Team, or N.A.R.T, for those who get off on acronyms. So, for the Ferraris to be run under an American license and not the Tricolore was strange as it was, but when the cars were rolled out of the van at the penultimate round in Watkins Glen, everyone in the paddock ground to a halt. The cars weren't draped in their usual Rossa Corsa red that symbolized the pride of Italian motoring. Instead, they were presented in a blue and white livery, the national competition colors of America. It was like catching Leo DiCaprio with a date over the age of 21. Just unthinkable. Everyone in that paddock was shook. But ultimately, them 13 seconds of shock soon passed when they remembered, oh yeah, we're still here to race them. On Sunday race day, the Ferraris had a mixed run of fortunes. The man with the lesser of chances, Bandini, had to effectively win the last 2 races to be in with the chance of the championship. But then on lap 58, his engine began to make some ominous noises, as if it wanted to do something. Yes, it wanted to blow itself up. The man most likely to bring in the dub for Ferrari, however, was former world motorbicycling champion John Surtees. He would finish second in this race, and that wasn't ideal, because the guy ahead of him was Graham Hill. Hill now had a good lead in the championship heading into the final round in Mexico, to the point where, as long as he didn't play hooky, it didn't really matter what anyone else would do. He would be the champion. If Surtees and Ferrari were to beat him and become champions themselves, they were going to need all the help they could get, and that's exactly what they would get. Despite being out of the title picture, Bandini would ultimately prove to be their freaking godsend. He cannoned into the back of Hill. Not 100% intentionally, of course. However, these gymnastics did cause damage to the BRM and threw Hill out of the points. But even that would not make Surtees the champion, for Jim Clark was leading the race, heading into the penultimate lap in his Lotus. And at this stage, he would be the world champion in his Lotus. But his problem was that he was in a Lotus. His engine had seized thanks to an oil line failure and threw him out of the race. Surtees was now in third, but even then, he would still not be the champion. He needed to finish in second place, or else Hill, who was still out of the points, would have enough in reserve to become the champion himself. So Surtees had only one lap to climb up to second place. Luckily for him, the man up ahead was Bandini, and while the cars were painted a wholly different color, it was still very much Ferrari. Team orders ensued, Bandini slowed right down, let Surtees past, giving the Brit the World Drivers' Championship and secured the Constructors' Championship for Ferrari. The sight of Ferrari winning both titles, being on top of the world, while their whole outfit was bereft of the iconic red color, just seemed wrong. Thankfully though, Enzo relented on his tantrum, and come the start of the 65 season, they went back to the Rosso Corsa red. Then, 60 years later, the blue would make a return, a nice homage to the N.A.R.T livery that brought about some of the greatest feats of victory ever achieved by Ferrari. Well, not quite. The shades of Azzurro La Plata and Azzurro Dino are actually meant to represent the racing suits that Ferrari drivers wore for the first 24 years in the Formula 1 World Championship. And if we're gonna get real cynical here, this might have a lot to do with the title sponsorship brand deal with Hewlett-Packard, adopting the blue to usher in a new age, rather than celebrating the one that came before. Not exactly the most romantic explanation ever uttered, but if history were to repeat itself, a blue Ferrari need not an explanation. Okay, now that I've said that, I've totally jinxed it. Yeah, screw it. Roll credits.